Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Oskar Quentin debate show. The Oskar Quentin show, something like that. I don't really know. I don't really care what you call the show. It's a live show where I debate people about politics on TikTok Live, usually MAGA, Trump-related stuff. I kind of make my own decisions on that. If you're watching this after the fact on YouTube, you can find a pinned comment that'll tell you when the calls start, and in the description, all of the oppositional calls are also time-stamped. I did it, everybody. I quit my job. Today was my last day. I'm no longer a high school teacher. I was sadder leaving work today than I thought I'd be. I was a substitute teacher, so I wasn't like a full curriculum teacher, but I was a pretty busy sub at the school that I worked at. And there's something to not being formally involved in education anymore. I obviously hope to be doing something reasonably educational here on this show, but yeah, to hang up the formal educator hat once again in my life is kind of a sad thing. Hopefully it was worth it. Rosso, how old are you again?
I am 27. I think we talked the other day. I just kind of came in and, told you how much I like what you're doing and everything. And I just wanted to pop in and say, hey, what's up? How's it going? Good to see you on.
Good to see you too. I'm gonna let you go because it's easier to get a debate if we don't have the line tangled up. But I do appreciate the people popping in and saying the kind words about the show. Yeah, it's going good because I quit my job to do this. That's hugely exciting. But I am just feeling sadder about it. I'm very excited about my schedule being easier. I'm very excited about doing the show at 10 a.m. Central Time for 2 hours until at least 12, maybe longer some days going forward. So the show will be at 10 a.m. tomorrow in the Central Time Zone. But I'm just pretty sad about, I don't know. I liked my students. It was the end of the year. I just disclosure wise, it was kind of a soft quit because I did get invited back to work in the fall. I actually got offered a promotion. I would have been given a more full-time job. And there was summer work for me to do that I could have also accepted. So it's, it was the end of the year. It was a good time for me to quit. But it's not as though I was going to be terribly busy for the next month anyway. And I also haven't really been taking shifts at this job for like a month to run the show. I just had a few shifts left over on the schedule that I didn't want to screw over my coworkers on. So I'm not going back. I'm not a teacher anymore. And I've been involved in education in some capacity or another pretty much my entire life. I did a lot of childcare growing up. My family was involved in that. And then I taught public speaking for a bunch of years, which I taught public speaking through a theater company to science students, which made it very all over the place in terms of teaching people how to present material, which is why I'm kind of good at this, I think. And that's the point on my resume that really has my success at this making sense to people. But it's sad. But I am excited about, in particular, being able to talk about it a little bit more because I've been worried the whole spring that I was going to get doxxed and fired. And of course, the school, it's been months now since I sat down with HR and explained what I was doing in my free time, just so, it wouldn't be a terrible surprise if they called a meeting and fired me because Twitter found out where I worked or something like that. So I was on good terms with all that, but the thing that was really hard to not talk about in public is that during Metro Surge, when ICE was really busy here in Minneapolis, every day I got up at something like 6 a.m, and my job was to go be security at the school I worked at. So we had kids who have like work study programs or different extracurricular stuff to get to. We had shuttles that picked up kids in the morning that weren't on good school bus routes. So we had a lot of transportation going on. And in addition to being a substitute teacher, I worked in the transportation department a little bit. I drove those shuttles sometimes. So for Metro Surge, I was very busy being a bodyguard for children. Literally walking from the bus to the door, looking over my shoulder to protect these kids from ICE agents. And then during my free time, I was out patrolling for ICE in the signal chats. And then I had all these protests to go to. And then at that same time, in addition to still needing to slave to make enough money, working odd jobs and delivery driving and all that stuff, I had gigs and I was, trying to be a musician, and I was busy starting up this social media platform. So I was insanely busy, and my entire life began revolving around Metro Surge because it was my day job, it was my free time, and then even in the creative space, it's this omnipresent thing. and it was really hard to keep my mouth shut about the fact that I was doing that, because I was doing all this social media posting about what's going on, but I just couldn't really talk about my firsthand experience with being an educator, which is kind of devastating. But now I can, so it's kind of a stale story, but it was fucking heartbreaking to be working at a school during Metro Surge. Even before we decided to close school, which we did for a while, the attendance was bad. When we decided to reopen school, attendance was also bad. I'm just... My fucking heart breaks for kids right now, because the generation of kids who are in high school, because I worked at a high school, they lost a lot of their education to COVID, which, you know, safety first. Education is not first, safety is. So when we have a safety situation, we close schools. So that's why we closed them during COVID, and that's why we closed them during Metro Surge for a little bit there. So that was the right call, but there are a bunch of kids who are really behind on everything. And as sweet as my kids are, I think I was pretty privileged with a well-behaved group of students I was working with. I was pretty respected as a teacher. Like all the jokes about subs really getting the shit end of the stick from the students, like, just wasn't my experience. The kids were really nice to me. They really appreciated me. But they're very behind, you know. Working at a high school feels a lot more like working at a middle school used to feel, which is just, you know, there's so many contributing factors to that. I think technology is really bad for kids. I think that parents are really dropping the ball on navigating the fact that the world works in a very different way than it used to, and people's attention spans are bad, and the generation that's younger than me, I'm 30 years old, I'm kind of at the apex of this thing where it's people younger than me are actually worse at technology than people older than them for the first time pretty much ever. So I just, you know, having that firsthand experience with it through this time, I think is part of what gave me my approach to doing this, because I am so centered on education. The show has to be entertaining. I spend plenty of time just, you know, dumping on the bigoted Trump supporters or whatever for the Instagram clips, but I think the people who watch the show know that I spend a lot of time really trying to focus on educating people who can be educated. That's the bottom line goal of doing this, is to get information that's accurate into people's brains. Anyway, I'm just rambling, but I literally left the building at like 12:30 and then came home, took my work clothes off, and got in this comfy outfit to sit here and do this. So I'm still just like sitting in it a little bit. I'm still kind of sad that I'm not a teacher anymore. But I'm doing something a little bit bigger than being a substitute teacher at a high school. So I'm overall pretty excited about it. Oh, and we're going to talk to Tyga. What a way to start the day. Remind me how old you are?
27.
27. You're a Trump supporter?
Yeah, so I was reading your little sign there. I quit my job to debate MAGA. Would you also say that without MAGA, you would not have this job? Like part of, you know,
Sure.
The show is MAGA coming on here?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so when liberals say that, oh, MAGA's obsessed with trolling the libs, you're making a living off of, you know, owning me or owning the next MAGA that comes down here, right?
I think I'm leveraging the fact that I'm good at owning the Republicans to get to what I'm really about, which is spreading some education about what's going on.
Okay, no, fair enough. Believe me, I think you're a fair. There's a lot of other lefty grifters on here that have lots of skulls in the closet, like Gunny. I don't know if Gunny speaks out. He beat that prisoner when he was a prison guard. He doesn't like to talk about that.
I don't know who you're talking about.
Oh, it's the muscle man that rides around on a motorcycle. Gunny speaks out. Yeah,
Okay.
He was a prison guard about 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think I know the guy you're talking about. He's the like handlebar mustache fuck Trump guy, right? He looks like a Trump supporter, but he's not. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, let the Wookiee win. Who cares? Yeah, no big deal. Anyway, so I want to ask you, why should somebody, as you know, a white man, why should they vote Democrat? Like, let's just say they have health insurance. Like, you know, I know that that's like a big, you know, usual W for Democrats is the health care. But what if you don't have? What if you already are like set with that? Like, you know, you're not a billionaire, but you have a nice job, like you make money. Like, why should somebody vote Democrat if they're doing okay in this society, in this economy?
Well, fundamentally, I don't think anybody should place their vote based on who they are. I think they should make a decision about what's best for the country, and that maybe should consider the identities of least advantaged people. I think that if you're in a position of advantage, if you're, say, doing well, like you might not care about welfare policies if you have money, for example, but you might not have money forever. You don't know what's going to happen to you in the course of your life. You don't know what's going to happen to your family. You don't know what's going to happen to the people that you care about. So because circumstances can change for people, we should establish policy that just makes the world a safer place, better place, easier place to prosper for everybody on average, and maybe address some of the areas where there are particular groups of people who really struggle with that, having that type of advantage and prosperous life. I don't think it should matter to you who you are when you cast your vote, though. I think we should all just do the same type of thinking and come up with our answers.
Yeah, but aren't human beings selfish in nature? You know, don't we do what's best for our own self-interest? Well,
yeah.
You know, every day.
Unregulated, humans are pretty savage creatures across the board, and I think it's through education that civilization has really risen out of the savagery of our animalistic past. Some people really don't like me using that type of language, but I think 100,000. I think it's fair to say 100,000 years ago, every human was like a savage monster. We were uneducated animals that barely had language at that time. We're not even sure when language really cropped up, and when we start talking about those sorts of timescales. So it's through education that we get better. So yeah, we're inherently selfish, but I think a better educated populace is going to make less selfish decisions.
So you're pretty much saying that, you know, it's the right thing to do to vote for other people's interest. Well, what about those? Should those people be voting for my interest or, you know, somebody else's interest? Like, why should, you know, the privileged people be voting for the less privileged people? I don't, like, inherently, like, why should that happen? Like, why
I feel like I already answered that. I feel like if
you said it's the right thing to do. I mean, you didn't really.
No, I expanded upon it because there's two reasons why you should vote for a way in a way that will benefit people who aren't like yourself. One is just because that's a nice thing to do. I think there's a perfectly good argument there. But I also brought up that separately, you also don't know what the course of your life is going to be like. We don't want there to be policies that allow a particular race to be disadvantaged regardless of which race it is, because we don't know what the race politics are going to be in 50 years. I think it's pretty silly to suggest that white people are going to become...
I think we all know how it's going to be.
I don't think we do. I think history is chaotic and we have no idea what anything is going to be like in 50 years. But I was just going to say, I think it's a little bit unlikely that, for example, like white people become an underclass, become a disadvantaged group. But even if they do, I want to live in a world that protects disadvantaged groups, regardless of which group that is. So that's why... Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So based off of what you've seen with this rampant anti-white sentiment, do you believe that when whites inevitably become a minority in the country, do you think that the other races that have been treated poorly by white people are just going to forget everything and treat us great? Are they going to
I object to your concern about anti-white sentiment being rampant. I think maybe you are incensed by anti-white rhetoric and your algorithms are probably showing you quite a lot of it, but out there in the real world, I don't think that there's any substantial growing anti-white sentiment. I do recognize the pendulum can swing the other way. People are a little mad at white people because of all the racism, but I don't urge people to go after white people. I don't think that that's...
Well, I know, but because you're white. I mean, I don't know why you would do something. I mean, because at the end of the day, you can, while we're in the majority, you can come up here and say, you know...
We already are a minority, by the way.
Well, I understand, but in 30, 40 years, they're going to come after you, too. And that's why my question for you is, while we can vote to help everybody else, are they going to look after us when we are the minority? Okay. Because we're rapidly becoming the minority. We don't have kids.
Can I just point out that the fact that you're concerned about becoming the minority suggests to me that you are indeed concerned about how minorities are treated. Is that correct?
I acknowledge that minorities have been treated poorly, yes.
Okay, so I'm not saying that we should switch sides and start mistreating white people. I'm saying that just across the board, we should stop mistreating people.
Again, I agree with you, but are you confident that when these people that have been mistreated get the power, that they are going to, you know, let bygones be bygones and create a society that is equal for everybody and not get us back? Because the human nature is to get somebody back. Mostly.
Well, again, you're appealing to human nature, which drives people to do some very bad things. But I'm not on a platform of supporting what human nature would want. I don't think people should get revenge on white people. I don't think that's sensible.
Well, I don't either. I think that's going to happen.
Right.
I think we're.
I don't think that's a very good concern. I don't think you're right about that. I think that the people who are upset about how minorities are treated want America to become a place where nobody is mistreated for their race.
So, and then one last thing. So, kind of the case study, what I'm referring to is South Africa. When white people decided to end apartheid because they said, you know what, this isn't right. We're not treating black people right. Black people vastly increased their power. I think there's like an 8% of white people, 90% of black people. And now they are legally taking back lands, which say, well, you know, you mistreated this black family in 1962. We're going to take this land, and you know they are taking things from white people. Now there's obviously a disagreement. Elon Musk says it's super violent. They're just unaliving people in the streets. I don't really necessarily agree with that, but they are doing racial quote unquote get backs to make things more even because they have a majority now.
Okay, let me say this. If we're going to try to parallel the what's happened in race relations with South Africa to America, you're looking in the wrong direction because South Africa is behind the curve compared to the United States. They ended their gigantic legally sanctioned division between the races in like 1990 or something like that. Then they had their Truth and Reconciliation Committee. They had all these processes. So if we try to find an analog in American politics, it's like the year 1900 or something because we ended slavery in 1865, which is like the big, gigantic, horrible historical grievance. And if you look at the Reconstruction era and the Industrial Revolution and that period in American history, you saw that sort of pendulum swing where there was all this difficulty back and forth, all this nasty, ugly stuff in our history. We in America are actually past that. We're further along. And we still have institutionalized racism. We still have major problems. But sitting here and acting like South Africa that's dealing with the fallout of a horribly unfair system being brought to an end in living memory is different than America, where we enslaved black people out of living memory, two generations worth of living memory ago.
I agree with you, but wouldn't that make the case that when white people are a minority in this country, that what's going to happen to us is going to be even worse than South Africa because we enslaved people, because we fed babies to crocodiles and we unalived 6-year-olds for whistling at people. I mean, some really bad stuff happened. So again, I think it's a rational fear. You maybe think I'm crazy. I don't know. If I know that my people have mistreated multiple groups of people, that when I'm a minority, that something bad is going to happen to me. And I think that's a rational fear.
Yeah, because I'm not racist. I think that you think that's rational because you are racist. You think that everybody else is going to. You think that everybody else is going to think the way you do, but they don't. Mm-hmm. If the groups who are disproportionately way less racist end up the majority. By the way, we're not talking about one particular race suddenly usurping white people as the majority. We're talking about all the other races adding up together to be a majority over what will then become a plurality still for white people. So like, it's not even really exactly the concern. The idea that if white people lose their control of the country, they're going to suddenly be subjugated by the other races is predicated on the notion that those other races are suddenly going to start acting like the white people did. And I just don't think that's likely. Some people, sure, there are people who are non-white in this country who want to commit violence against white people, but there's hundreds of millions of people in this country. So you can find somebody at the far end of the spectrum on any particular issue who's going to behave in a way that I would find reprehensible.
Of course, I'm not saying that, oh my God, this group of people is foaming at the mouth to hurt white people. But again, we still have that, there still is that majority. But when there is a clear look, they're not really around anymore. You brought it
here. I just want to jump on something before it gets lost. You brought up race mixing earlier, which is such a horrible phrase to use. Hypothetically, give it a few generations. Give it like 5 generations, 5 or 10 generations. We're talking maybe 200 years from now. If on Earth or in America or in whatever locality, doesn't matter, if there's so much race mixing that we end up in a situation where everybody's kind of approximately the same race, don't you think racism will just go away?
No, because there'll still be colorism. There'll still be the idea that...
if everybody was roughly the same... Make it 100 generations. I'm just speaking. I want to understand your perspective on what race is and how it's supposed to matter in a society. So if everybody became the same, medium dark skin color, whatever we'd look like, mixed race of several generations of race mixing, as you call it, which again, I just think even using that phrase is a demonstration of your position on racism. How would racism exist if everybody was the same race?
If everybody was the same race and had the same tone of color and the same eye color and the same hair,
sure.
Human beings are very visual. We give higher status to like people who are obsessed with eyes. Oh my God, your skin's so soft. People do this and their hair. So to answer your question, if everybody looked the same, no, there'd be no racism. But
okay, so what it sounds to me is that it doesn't matter at all what the distribution of the races in society are, whether white people are a minority or a majority.
I'll give you an example.
Excuse me, I'm not done. Doesn't seem to matter whether there's a distribution of that kind at all, whether white people are a minority or a majority. That doesn't seem to matter because you said that we'll have the same problems if everybody was the same race. We'll just pick things about each other to get mad about, which suggests to me that the problem is the way that people look at race, and we need to address that and talk about that, because it sounds to me like you recognize there's going to be shitty people no matter what. I'm saying we just shouldn't elect those sorts of people to be president or other elected officials.
Well, okay, that could be. There still will be white supremacy, and I want to make this clear. If white people get down,
you think that there would still be white supremacy if there wasn't white people?
If white people are in the single digits, there still will be white supremacy, because you look at South Africa, there's like 8% white people. There still is white supremacy because white people.
What does that have to do with my line of questioning?
Well, your line of questioning, because if the vast majority of people look the exact same, i.e., Brazil is a perfect example, has a extremely high biracial, I'll use the term that you prefer, population, extremely high, but the most money in the country is concentrated in white neighborhoods. They have a white supremacy problem.
Okay, that doesn't answer my question, because you're providing a real world example. I'm trying to understand how you think that there would still be racism in a society where everybody was the same race, and you're bringing up one of the most racist societies on earth.
Great, I'll give you an example.
Where people aren't all the same race.
Okay, I'll give you an example because, again, I went there. Vietnam. Vietnamese people are horrified of going out in the sun at certain times because they don't want their skin to look darker, because that signifies you're out in the sun and you're lower class. Asian people are extremely colorist because the more time you spend in the sun.
I've done something similar where I've gone to a job interview and spent a half hour washing the oil off my hands because I didn't want the person I was interviewing with to know that I was a manual laborer. What does that have to do with race?
Yeah. Well, usually people with darker skin do the manual jobs, and Asian countries.
Is that what the Vietnamese people are thinking, or is it because they're tanned and they don't want to have a tan? Because if you're tanned, it means you're a manual laborer, and they're trying to hide that about themselves.
Exactly. That's what I'm.
Okay.
Yes.
Then the oil on my hands from working on a car, which I had to wash off to put on a suit and tie and go get my job as a teacher.
Well, there's also white proximity. People like to,
now you're just moving on to other stuff. I'm not understanding your perspective.
Okay, we could stay on what you're talking about, but it comes down to darkness. The more time you spend. Okay, then why do white people tan so much? White people like to be tanner. I mean, white people see tanning themselves is a way to beautify themselves. It's a way to beautify themselves. Asians hate tanning themselves.
Doesn't the fact that white people like tanning themselves to beautify themselves, isn't that counter evidence to what you're claiming about race?
Well, every culture sees it different.
That's true, because racism is a social racism is a social construct. So yes, that tracks. I'm going to take a moment to thank Katie for the $2 super chat. She says, "Your fear is no excuse to hold people down. Racist." I agree with Katie's assessment of you. Sorry, Katie, I missed that one for a second, but I noticed it because Jazz also sent a $5 super chat over on YouTube. Jazz Bearing Crab said, "This guy seems to be unaware that race as a concept isn't a natural thing. It was invented by a Christian to justify vilifying and enslaving people," which I actually agree with. We're all the same species. There's a interesting anthropological, biological, historical reasons why humans outwardly do look more different from one another across the board than a lot of other species of animals do. But I don't think that a nuanced conversation of biology is what's about to happen on this call.
Okay, well, I mean,
do you think I'm just going to ask you some basic questions. Do you think it matters if a person's black?
What do you mean by it matters?
black person born into a white family in a white culture, adopted, like
oh yeah, well,
do they,
we just saw that today with Brad Pitt's adopted daughter from Africa. He went in, saved her. A-list celebrity. She wants to drop his last name. She just turned 18. So all that money he spent on her, loving her, she could have unalived due to not having any food or medicine in the country, and she still wants to be with her biological father. Totally. I mean, this is why we could talk all about.
Okay. So wait. Before you start wandering, because I feel like you're already wandering away from what the purpose of my question was. You think that the behavior of one individual, one anecdotal example about what one adopted black person did, which, by the way, I would say is probably not the experience of most people on Earth. Most people aren't adopted by an A-list celebrity. You took one anecdotal example who's an outlier from society, the daughter of an A-list celebrity, and that's your evidence for that black people are different
adopted
innately.
Daughter. That's not his daughter. He adopted her. I think souls are connected.
Do you think that was an important thing to point out about what I just said?
Yes, because I feel like people are.
All right, then let answer what I was actually asking. Do you think that the adopted daughter of an A-list celebrity, as an anecdotal example, is a good way to come to a conclusion or prove to me a trend that you think exists about race?
No, it's not necessarily a race thing. She could be any different race. The point I was making, that doesn't have 100% with the topic, is that I think human souls are connected. That's why kids, no matter how shitty their parents are, will always have a longing to be with their parents. That's why stepdads don't work. That's why a lot of adoptive situations are abusive.
Do you think that black people are innately, in any important way, different from white people? That's my question.
Culturally, yes. Not
culturally is okay. That's the question.
Well, maybe biologically too, but
no. Okay, then
yeah.
Okay, so you've given me two conflicting answers in the last 15 seconds because I'm not talking about nurture. I am talking about nature. I'm talking about biologically. You said no, and about 5 seconds later corrected yourself to yes. Which the fuck is it, Tyga? You got to figure out your racism before you come and explain it to me.
Well, here's the thing. Obviously, the biological things have been, some scientists have debunked it. I don't agree with like the whole, they have a longer bone. So I'll talk about culturally. Culturally, yes, they're different. That's why when you see white people grow up around a lot of black people, they act different. And when black kids grow up around a lot of white people, they act different. You take on your environment. That's why we call, we have names for these people. And,
so for example, if we're going to talk about cultural differences, I was really interested in understanding your nature argument, but you keep moving on to that nurture. I would like to point out that white people in this country have been nurtured in a way that caused them to be far more oppressive than the other races. Does that make me racist against white people?
Well, you're white. You can say whatever you want. I mean, that's your opinion. No, you could. There's plenty of things to criticize white people.
Whether or not I'm allowed to say it, you pointing that out dodges the question.
Well,
white people in history have been the bad guys. We're the dangerous ones. If you want to use a nurture argument for which race is a problem, it is white people. Like, we're the ones who get up to all the bad shit. We do all the school shootings. We do most of the enslaving that's ever happened in this country. We do all the awful shit. Like, what's your point?
Well, that's in this country. Again, slavery is a worldwide problem. White people have also been the people that have liberated a lot of the people out of the problems. I think again, anybody in the world can come here in our white culture, society, and be of any religion. I can't go to Saudi Arabia and hold up signs that talk about Muhammad. I can't go over there and say that women shouldn't be, treated like this, or I can't talk about the government or any of these things. These are democracies.
Okay, I'm not understanding.
It's specific to white culture.
See, here's the problem with this conversation that I'm having, Tyga, is that every time I ask you a specific question, you just start yammering about every thought you have about all these things. You're trying to convey to me your entire worldview, and I'm not understanding it. It seems pretty racist. It seems like you glance out the window and you look at how things are to you. You provide anecdotal examples to me when I ask these questions. Sounds to me like you're very racist. Sounds to me like you haven't thought this stuff out. Sounds to me like you don't have a good understanding of the history and you're not able to apply this stuff very well. I can't tell tell if the chat's mad at me about what I said or what you said. But if I mixed up what happened here versus what happened in the world, because I know in history it's not white people who've done most of the enslaving. I'm talking about in America. It certainly is. But my caller, Tyga, you're making cultural arguments. You recognize that right now in 2026, if we're going to speak culturally, it is white people who are dangerous.
I don't agree with that at all. You could say the Native Americans, white people are dangerous to them. You could say to African Americans during the civil rights and slavery, yes, they were dangerous, of course. Nowadays, in 2026, we are the most accepting culture. Anybody can come live here.
That's horseshit. That's horseshit. What do you mean culture? Anybody can come live here? Don't be fucking ridiculous, dude. Come on.
Someone from Somalia can come here. They can't. Trump has specifically done things that make it harder for actually Somalis to come here at all. It's a particular group he's gone after. There were 700 Somali Americans who had asylum status in here in Minnesota who were here legally, who he just, by the stroke of the pen, made into illegal immigrants by taking away their asylum status. You were making shit up, dude. It's fucking ridiculous what you just said. Well, how many Somalis are in Minnesota legally?
Oh, I don't know.
Living there, maybe even citizens.
I don't know. I would guess it's got to be a 6-digit number, I'd guess. I'm not certain.
Okay, so a 6-digit number of Somalis have come here, established their life here, own homes, own businesses, and could I go do that there? What does that have to do with what we're talking about? Because our culture accepts people. That's what you're not understanding.
No, it doesn't.
Oscar, our culture accepts people. You can come here.
No, it doesn't.
Pretty much build your own city if you want.
That's ridiculous. The idea that America's
Go ahead.
No, this is propagandist bullshit. You're just trying to define out of existence every mission statement of the current administration, and I'm just not going to let you do it. I'm not going to take it seriously. I'm not going to speak respectfully to you while you let such bullshit fall out of your mouth. We're talking about the political climate in America, and to suggest that America is the most accepting place on the earth to all kinds of people is fucking absurd. And I'm accusing you of knowing. I don't think you're stupid. I think you're being willfully ignorant. You're pretending to think that that's true.
I don't think it is an insult.
I do think you happen to also be stupid. I don't think you said that because you're stupid. I think you said that because you're racist and bigoted.
Which countries are better than us in terms of immigration? We take more people than anybody in the entire world. What country takes more immigrants?
We're one of the biggest. We're the greatest demand for immigration here. The fact that the numbers because it's awesome here in general, quality of life wise.
Why is it
right?
awesome?
There's opportunity. There's land. There's resources. There's industry.
Us, Oscar, why is it awesome here?
For the reasons I just said while you were condescendingly saying, but that doesn't mean that people here aren't racist. That doesn't mean that minorities here aren't in danger. You're just sidestepping that. Just because the numbers are big doesn't make me impressed. We're one of the biggest countries on the planet. Of course, one of the numbers are big. That's the same thing as Donald Trump saying that there are more jobs ever with him as president than ever before, which is only true because the total population has increased. The actual unemployment rate isn't, remarkably low or anything. It's not terrible at the moment. But
we're a racist country, but people still want to move here. What's that say about us?
People have stopped moving here lately because of the racists who are running the country.
Okay, when there's a Democrat, you can open up the border again and take in whoever you'd like. That's what they're going to do. Again, they're still going to want to move here because we're the most accepting culture in the world.
No, we're not. That's made up. There are European countries that are far more accepting. Canada's more fucking accepting, for fuck's sake, and they're our next door neighbor.
Who wants to live in Canada?
More and more Americans with each passing day, dude.
Yep, and yet they never leave.
Plenty of them do leave.
You think they're leaving?
Somebody sent me $5 on YouTube Super Chat. Jazz Baron Crab sent me another $5 super chat saying, this guy seems to be unaware that race as a concept isn't a natural... Oh, wait, no. Sorry, I already read this one. Thank you again, Jazz Baron Crow. So my chat wasn't scrolling. There we go. Katie sent me another $2 YouTube super chat, though, to say Trump is in office because of racists. I agree. I think that the lies that get told by Republicans about the other races are a huge contributing factor to the political success of Republicans right now. Tyga, what do you care about, dude? What's important to you in your life? What do you think about when you vote?
Who's going to tax? Who's going to charge less in taxes? And who's for white people? Those are my two biggest things.
Okay.
Democrats can do it.
So you're both selfish and racist.
It's not a racist thing. It's just I have to look out for myself.
Voting for the people who are going to treat white people the best is about as racist as it gets.
Well, the Democrats could do it the next election. They just got to stop their bullshit. Most Trump people used to be Democrats, and so they went the whole I hate white people thing. Would you at least acknowledge that? Most Trump people are working class. They're not billionaires and millionaires.
What's the specific question you just asked me? I'm having a hard time seeing through all this racism.
Most Trump supporters are former Democrats. They're Obama voters. They're Bill Clinton
That's
voters.
fucking nonsense.
It's nonsense?
Yeah, that's fucking nonsense.
There's a lot of MAGA
okay, that's a different claim than the one that you just made. Because again, you can say a word like a lot, and the number of past Democrats who are now Trump supporters is probably like a big number. It's probably got lots of zeros on it or something, right? But proportion-wise, you said most Trump supporters are people who voted for Obama, which is among the hotter takes I've heard running
most Trump supporters. No, a large amount of Obama voters went for Trump. They switched over because they like Trump.
But what's a large amount to you? What does it matter if some people did that?
I don't have the exact numbers. I mean,
then what the fuck are you talking about? What is this?
Because people didn't. Obama was popular. McCain sucked and Romney sucked, and that's who the Republicans were nominating. And then this guy named Trump came down the escalator. And people say, yeah, I kind of like that guy.
Look, I think if the people who vote solely on who's like coolest or funniest on the TV or whatever, the people who vote that irresponsibly by not actually considering anything important, sure, I bet some people found Obama entertaining, voted for him, found Trump entertaining, voted for him, found Biden not to be so entertaining and kept voting for Trump or whatever. I don't think that's a big slice of the electorate. I don't think that's a huge group of people.
Well, Obama was very popular, extremely popular. He kicked ass. He destroyed McCain and embarrassed
Why are we
Romney.
talking about this particular subslice of voters that you don't even know the size of? Why did you bring this up?
Well, it's obvious if Obama won very easily and then Hillary Clinton lost, the only rational thought is that some of those voters went over to Trump.
I think one of the reasons. I think a big reason. I think one of the reasons that one of the big contributing factors to Trump winning in 2016 is because a bunch of center voters are misogynistic and don't think women can lead. I think that Hillary lost a lot of votes because she was a woman, and that's a shame.
Okay, so Hillary loses, and then you run a woman against Trump again. The Democrats.
I thought
why would they do something?
I thought for electability issues, that was a totally stupid move. I blame Biden for running again. He said he wasn't going to. I consider that a big lie of his that I'm really unhappy about. I do think 107 days prior to the election, Kamala Harris was the best bet that the Democrats had. But Joe Biden created that situation for the Democrats, and I think that's silly. We should have spent Biden's 4 years coming up with a better candidate that we can all get unified behind, and we failed to do that. That's something I'm very upset with establishment Democrats about.
Okay. All right. Well, it's nice talking to you. I'm going to let someone else up on here. Thanks for your time.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sackboss, for the $2 YouTube super chat. He says, ask this guy if he's ever talked to a non-white IRL. I wish I'd asked him that. Something tells me that this guy doesn't engage much with people who aren't like himself. If you want to support the show, now that I've quit my job to do it full time, you can go to the link tree in my bio and, follow me for free on the other platforms. It doesn't cost a dime and it helps immensely. And if you have a dime you want to spare, you can send it to my Venmo, Cash App, Buy Me a Coffee, or Patreon, like Joseph just did over on Cash App. Am I right? Oh my God, Cash App. Get it together with your notifications. Joseph sent me $5 to say, you're a good human. Check out Lennon Claypool CD. I will. I'll look through those later. All right, everybody, we're gonna get back to it. We got a pretty full queue today. We're gonna talk to BW Cross, BW, and then a crucifix emoji. Are they going to connect? How old are you?
Hey, what's up, brother?
Doing all right. How old are you?
18.
What year were you born in? What year were you born in? I don't think he's 18. How can I still hear him? I already disconnected him. Anyway, yeah, I think he was not 18 and not good at math because I gave him way too much time to do that. We're going to talk to Julie Has a Lot of Birds. Have I spoken to Julie Has a Lot of Birds before? I don't remember. Maybe she's a friendly. Or maybe this isn't Julie. Maybe this is just somebody whose username is about Julie. I don't know. Scout! W's in the chat for Scout. She's being very distracting and difficult during the show today. She wants to climb all over the keyboard, but she's not allowed. Hello.
The keyboard, but she's not allowed.
Sorry.
Hello. No worries. Did you mean to connect?
Sorry, I didn't mean to hit the button.
No worries. Ah! Scout! Scout, if you had any idea how many people were watching, you would hide under the bed. Let's talk to Playboy Farty 1629. If I can keep my cat under control the whole time. Scout, do I just need to move the keyboard? Why do you want to be on the desk? Sit on my lap, Scout. Hello, how old are you? Hello? Goodbye. We're going to talk to SUDEEP, who I definitely have talked to before. I feel like this is a friendly or maybe some not your usual caller. I don't remember. Hopefully he'll remind me. How old are you?
27.
27. Remind me who you are. I know we've talked before.
Yeah, we talked. I'm like a leftist who's friendly as well.
Yes.
Yeah, but
did you catch the communism episode from the other day?
Yes. Yeah. I thought it was very interesting.
Good.
It did make me think about my own philosophies as well. Like, I largely agree with the first communist, of course. His register was very nice, and like he sounded good, and how he presented stuff, and you guys agreed on a lot of things. Obviously, the tone of the second person wasn't very conducive to like real dialogue.
I just want to point out to the audience who maybe doesn't know what we're talking about. We had a communist caller come in, and he and I had what I felt was a very productive conversation about. Mostly, we have common ground. Me and that sort of communist. A couple things we disagree about: the pragmatic approach and kind of the time scale of accomplishing the things we want to accomplish in American politics. And we complained about a lot of unproductive dialogue that happens with communists who just can't even recognize the common ground and just kind of yell over me and call me stupid. And then the very next caller was exactly that sort of communist, and without even knowing it, fit every little thing that we had said was unproductive. So it was kind of comedically, it was pretty entertaining that the two calls happened next to each other. But yeah, just that's for background for everybody. But I don't like, I'm not opposed to a lot of leftist ideologies, and I myself consider myself very close to the leftist label as a liberal. I'm just like right in that blurry spot in the middle. And the type of caller who was the second caller just can't even recognize that as true. They think I'm just as bad as Hitler because I vote at all or something, which is just, I don't think that's reasonable.
Yeah, I agree. I think in that debate, the whether incrementalism is really complicity, and your whole idea of like, oh, we can defer these ideas of taking down capitalism until we coalesce into a united front. I think it makes a lot of sense to me, but the second caller made me rethink that a little bit, because I think we have seen historically the whole idea that, okay, we'll resolve our differences once we beat the common enemy, is how our political differences between you and I get completely evacuated. How the block that we create, the coalition of left we create to defeat the common enemy, it just leads to people nodding along and people saying, essentially, one of the groups within that coalition gets silenced in my view. Like that, the deferral in doing the deferral,
I get what you're saying. Is that if the position is an
idea,
if your position is a completely anti-capitalist one, I think I'm just trying to summarize your argument to make sure I understand it. It's that if we team up to defeat the evil Republicans, your anti-capitalist mission gets forgotten along the way, because that's not what the majority of that coalition are going to be supporting. Am I understanding your concern correctly?
Yeah, and by like going along with the dominant tendency in the here and now, the coalition as a whole wins by default, but it also reframes my position as an anti-capitalist as splitting from whatever is the dominant position. So I think the leftist is trying to change the overarching dominant position, rather than being viewed as like right now we're just a left wing of the Democratic Party.
I think that concern would be, I would co-sign that argument if you were making it against a liberal that was more establishment liberal than myself. I think I'm too close to being a leftist for that to apply to the perspective that I offer on American politics. I think I offer a perspective on American politics that's going to create more leftists than an establishment liberal or a leftist of the sort that was the second caller yesterday that doesn't see the common ground. Because I don't think that leftists and liberals are well, like I said, I think there's a blurry line between them, and I'm in an area of the spectrum where, depending on how people define it, a lot of establishment liberals would call me a leftist because of some of my more extreme beliefs, and I think that there's validity to that claim within the way that they define it. But because I'm critical of capitalism, because I recognize that it's kind of the root of all evil in a way that I seriously agree with the Marxists on, I think that the solution for overcoming it is going to be a progressive one. I think that overthrowing the system and trying to replace it with one that doesn't have capitalism is just, that's the nuclear option, right? We're all standing in a pool of gasoline together. Let's not fight with fire. Like we can argue about this. We can wrestle in all this oil together, but let's not start any fires because then we'll all get burned. And I think societal collapse bad. I think that, frankly, and forgive me for maybe saying that if I feel this applies to you, I think it is just short-sighted to want that sort of overthrow, because it's only a person who's lived a pretty privileged life in a country that has civil rights that can feel like that's good. I think you take society for granted if you want to overthrow it.
Yeah, but I think that presumes a kind of guardrail that society has in place today. Like, I don't think necessarily those guardrails for good civic organization are all that strong today, in as far as like we're seeing the extent of it and the polarization just growing, and the whole, I think that's more direct evidence of the communist like structural critique that previous system safeguards haven't really prevented catastrophe throughout human history. It's just captured the dominant ideology and then elevated that. And that's been a sequential thing. It might have been.
Are you pushing back on the idea that you like the specific thing I have about taking society for granted by wanting to overthrow it? Are you saying that society isn't doing a good job of keeping you safe, generally speaking, today?
I mean, I'm privileged, so it's keeping me safe, but I don't have, like, I would say the global south is not doing too hot right now under global capitalism. So I think we've continued to extract it and continued to keep the same systems in place, and in doing away with those systems, I think there's ways to go about it that are less harmful, and the logistical question is that how do we safely create the systems anew and not create more violence and harm out of it, and not, okay, we'll get to it eventually. Like, I think the deferral question is where I'm caught up, and I think it was just to bring it home to where I wanted the conversation to go. Not a real pivot, but I wanted to talk about race a little bit more with you, and maybe figure out my own thoughts about race and reparations, because I too similarly brought in one of my philosophy classes, we were reading critical race theorists like Charles Mills, and brought up the idea that, hey, maybe in couple 3-4 generations we'll all be beige and racism will be gone, and I got some pretty big pushback that I remember, which I felt was warranted, honestly, in that at least the way we were reading about racism in that class is that race is a social and legal construct, not a biological reality, and I kind of agree that these the closer whiteness as an idea is not really about color at all. And it's really about these power relations that continue to be in place. It's this political system designed to distribute resources to favor one side over another. And it's not really tied to a particular phenotype. So I think the colorism that the other caller brought up and that whole idea doesn't really adjust the underlying legal social definitions of what counts as this is a full person who is white, is granted all the legal authority, and then this is some other that is excluded, subhuman. They're the immigrant exclusion, like, is warranted for them because they have less personhood. And that's what I think whiteness is constituted, at least from a critical race theory lens. And thus, because of that harmful relationship, the only thing necessary to rectify that situation is something like reparations, where you give back the stolen property. Yeah.
No, I struggle with that sort of conclusion from it, because I think that the fundamental issue that a lot of people take with reparations is that the person offering the reparations is often just a descendant of somebody who did the bad thing. Which is a little hard for me to swallow ethically, because the whole point of being non-racist is that it's not supposed to matter who birthed you. We don't punish people for their parents, whether it's a crime their parent committed or the color of their skin. We're not supposed to punish people for what they were born into. So I was born into a country where I live on stolen land. I live on land that people hundreds of years ago showed up and committed what most people would call genocide against people who were here, kicked them off the land, caused a lot of death, didn't help them, didn't treat them fairly, still aren't treating them fairly. The ones, the Native American Indians that are still here are not getting a good shake, and I want them to be getting a better shake than they are. But I don't think that we should delete America, and I don't think it's an ethical solution to abort America and give it back to the Native Americans, because that would still just cause more suffering. And this is all about suffering, right? My ethics are always about suffering. What will cause undue suffering? And I think that 350 million people live here now. That's a lot more people than lived here in the 15, 16, 1700s. And a lot of those people would suffer immensely if we tried to undo America. So it's not sensible to do that sort of thing. I do think that it's fair sometimes to offer a solution that gives unfair advantage to an already less advantaged group. If you want to talk about some of the Philbro stuff, you might know I'm talking about John Rawls and his perspective on ethics, which is that you can make up an unfair rule if the person who benefits from it was already getting the short end of the stick. I think that that's reasonable. It gets a little muddy, people argue about things like affirmative action, whether that's a good application of those ethics. But I guess, like, other than sitting here and talking about exactly which schools of philosophical thought we think about all these critical race theory things, what's your question for me? What do you want to understand about my perspective?
Yeah, I wanted that take specifically on reparations. I wanted to hear that. And yeah, it sounds like you're like a consequentialist. You care about suffering and like what actually matters in the real world. And I think these critical race theories, at least the one few I've read, are coming more from or they're more an attack against this idea that the libertarian idea that personal property is paramount, that it's like it can't be voided in any way. If you own something legally, the government has no right to take it from you and give it to anyone else. That's like one of the libertarian ideals, I think. And Mills, he kind of countered that by saying that property is only yours legally if it was acquired justly in the first place, which I think we can both agree slavery, colonization, mass murder is not very fair or a just thing to do. So the principle of rectification is that you have to be able to, if land, labor, wealth is explicitly stolen through all these forms of colonialism, slavery, Jim Crow, etc., that means that original acquisition of wealth is a massive injustice that you can't just leave lingering. Otherwise, it creates this current distribution of wealth we see today that I find to be illegitimate because it's based in that historical nature. So it's less of the idea of like, okay, we're going to give Black people handouts or charity or anything. It's more of like restoring the idea. And you bring up a good point about Native Americans and indigenous tribes, and like, okay, we can't give all the land back without taking it from white people.
Well,
or
it's just so disruptive to people who maybe have just worked their whole lives to get their property. There's something like that. So I just don't, I guess when you want my perspective on the reparations, it's like, what are we offering in terms of reparations? I think the idea that the United States or white people or whatever group could offer something to African Americans as reparations for what we fucking did to them for hundreds of years on this continent, I'm okay with that as long as it doesn't violate those principles that I said earlier about like, okay, that doesn't mean we should take $1,000 out of the bank account of every white person and give it to give it to African Americans as like a distributed stipend, because there's just a bunch of poor white people that would fuck over for no good reason at all. They didn't do it. They didn't enslave anybody, you know? Like, why? Like, it's not a fair way to assess how to distribute the reparations. So if we're going to talk about reparations, I'm not opposed to reparations in any inherent way. I just find them very hard to justify for the reasons I've talked about in this call. So I would need to look at some individual set of reparations and pass judgment on it, as opposed to talk about the idea generally, because we have done some effort of reparations with the Native Americans. I don't think good enough. Like I said, I don't want to defend the United States on that, but we have made illegal allowances. For example, we in America, as constitutionalists, people who believe in law and order, recognize that we've created a special legal status for these people that recognizes the fact that they were here first, which is not enough. It doesn't fix it, but I'm okay with that. Is my point, is that because I don't see any major harm to somebody else for the United States to recognize the status of the tribes, to recognize the legal authority of the tribes, even though they're on American land where you know, they are subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Like, that sort of exception, I think, in terms of this ethical line of reasoning, is a reparation that, to me, doesn't cause any of the sorts of harm that I'm concerned about, so I'm okay with it. So just for any individual thing, I would just have to judge it case by case. Reparations are fucking hairy, ethically. Yeah,
I agree. And it's not something like I've researched super in depth about the people who've spelled out the policy of reparations. I think the ones I've read do take the more targeted taxation route that you find problematic insofar as using the legal justifications of taxation and all of these legal mandates and policy restructuring to shift resources into historically marginalized communities. And necessarily that might mean away from more privileged communities. Now, whether that distinction is made on a basis of purely race and more so class is, I think, an open discussion. Critical race theorists side obviously more with the race thing, as that is paramount to them. I stand probably more on the side of the privileged, like wealthy elite should be the ones paying for this kind of
and this gets to the neck of the woods that we never get to with the unproductive communists, like the second caller the other day, where I think if you knew what I want for society, I think you might actually be pretty excited about some of the ways I want to handle capitalism and wealth in this country. It never gets talked about on this show because we're fighting a rapist in the Oval Office, but if we have a blue wave, if we have a progressive blue wave, if the Democratic Party starts actually getting things done, and people like me can speak our voices and start pushing for actually progressive policies, things like what Mayor Mamdani is doing in New York, things like that Bernie Sanders has been screaming about at the top of his lungs with a very sweaty forehead for literally decades at this point. If we actually get some of that stuff done, I am for a wealth tax. I am for some amazingly aggressive progressive tax rates that make it very hard to become a billionaire. It should be almost mathematically impossible in our tax system to become wealthy. I think that the loopholes to get around taxes by borrowing against your wealth, against your equity, and then having all the capital gains on that reset when you die, so you can just let somebody inherit it, and all that capital gains taxation gets wiped away. I think that's theft from the people. I think there's all these things about our system that are completely and utterly broken, and I want to attack them in a way that's aggressive. We just can't do that if we're fighting active fascist control of the government. I think that here's an example of something that's like my flavor of progressive, semi-socialistic, democratic socialist, or social democrat, however you want to label it. I think if the product you sell becomes so important to the functioning of society, I think it's acceptable for you to lose sole ownership of it. For example, we have utilities that are recognized as a particular class of services. It's different, you know. YouTube selling me a subscription plan is different than the internet company selling me my internet. I think internet's a utility, and we need to have some protections that make sure that people get internet. There has been law passed in this country that got broadband to people who didn't have it, because it was clear that not having good internet was really seriously debilitating for participating in commerce in the 21st century. We have that with water. You know, the state regulates the quality of the water that comes out of your pipes, even if somebody's paying the water company to deliver it. And I think that we're in a situation right now where there's things like Amazon doing things with basic goods delivery that are becoming, in that sense, a utility. We have social media doing that, where instead of the town square, here we are on TikTok Live and YouTube. The clips are going to be on Instagram and Facebook and Threads and shit like that. Those products are becoming so important to the functioning of society that it begins to be a little bit unfair that they're controlled by private ownership. In the same way that if somebody owned all the pipes that delivers the water to people's houses, they'd be able to do seriously unfair things to those people because they control the fucking water that they drink. So in terms of the my optimal course forward, it is one that really aggressively changes the way that we look at capital, especially as it pertains to things that are owned by the few that affect the many, like Amazon, like YouTube, like TikTok, like all these companies, like all of Elon Musk's companies, like all these big things. That is where capital can do its most evil. Even though capitalism in that case has been used to create a product that's doing so much good, I think we need a legal and ethical framework in this country that addresses that fact, because it's been running rampant in some domains and causing problems, namely social media, media I think is really responsible for the current climate. The fact that a third of the country have turned into conspiracy theorists who believe a bunch of bullshit, which is what I call MAGA. You actually believe a bunch of tabloid rumor bullshit nonsense that the Republicans told you. Like, that's fucking crazy nonsense, and it's the fault of the billionaires that own the town square that we all preach in that's been allowed to happen. So I think we need great reform for all of that, and I think we're poised to do it because people are so fucking mad about what Trump is doing. I think we can take advantage of the fact that the pendulum is going to swing the other way and make some real change. So I think in terms of the things we want, the way we feel about capitalism, I just think it's closer. You might recognize this about me having
less leftist than you give yourself credit for, honestly.
Well, that's kind of my point, because when I talk to people like you can see that depending on the topic, I might be a leftist or a liberal. I'm very much in the middle, but the hardcore leftists don't want me, and the hardcore liberals don't want me. I'm something else. I'm somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I consider myself maybe something else too, because I totally agree with you in that the way I categorize it is, I think all inelastic goods should be public goods, like not privately owned. So that's housing, education, healthcare,
toilet paper,
internet. Yeah, anything that like
toilet paper. We learned how inelastic toilet paper is supposed to be in COVID.
Yeah, anything where their demand does not go down ever, because humans need it for survival. Yeah. I think that should be covered by a collective, and not, you don't need to scrounge around your last dollars to cover that.
That's just it. I
politics, yeah.
Right. I grew up in a city where it's hard to find a place to use the bathroom legally in New York. It's just a thing New York struggles with, and it always bothered me, because when you gotta go, right? Like, that's the phrase. Like, why do I have to buy a coffee at a coffee shop to be able to pee? I'm a human being on Earth. I should be allowed to do that because it's a necessary function of my life. So yeah, when it comes to things that people just absolutely need, those are the sorts of things that, as the wealth increases and we use liberal progressive policies to take control of that wealth, so like a small club of assholes don't abuse everybody about it, it's like, those are the things that should be free. Universal basic income might get you there, where you can say, like, all right, everybody has $1,000 a month to buy what they need, and maybe that'll get you your diapers and your tampons and your toilet paper, your basic home goods that everybody needs, or some of the bigger utilities that you were talking about. Or I can imagine a world where, like, you've got the post office, that's a government program, you got the fire department, that's a government program, you got the police station, that's a government program. I could imagine the government grocery store where you can go and get diapers and tampons for free, because why the fuck wouldn't we, right? Like, doesn't that sound nice? What a program that would be if we just took some taxpayer money and made some basic goods that then nobody would be incentivized to steal, right? There wouldn't be a very good street value for things like diapers if the government just gave them to us for free. And a lot of the low-level petty crime that happens in this country is people robbing stores or robbing people to get money to go to the store and buy things, basic needs like that. So I lately have been appreciating that some leftists like yourself have come to me to have practical, real conversations about this, because you're right. I think I am more than a leftist than most people think I am, when they hear that I think it's important to vote in November. I think it's really, really important we work our asses off to get more blue people elected in this particular midterms than red people. But that's not my mission statement. That's not what I'm about politically. Ethically, I'm such a close neighbor of people like yourself on the political spectrum, and that's really what I preach. And I think that if that makes more leftists from my audience than it otherwise would, that's fine, because fundamentally I think that their hearts are in the right place, even if we disagree a little bit about the practical politics of how to get there. Yeah,
and I think the way I think about it is like, okay, we got anti-capitalism, or capitalism as an evil thing to be deconstructed. You seem to be on page with that, but the other two heads of this of this dilemma are always going to be patriarchy and white supremacy, in my mind. And those are, I think, are often less talked about in these political spaces, or less like, it's more niche, I guess. And I wanted to hear your take on what you think the tools would be to strip white supremacy of its powers, strip the patriarchy of its powers. I think it's the law. I think you would agree with me too, that a transformed legal system that enforces things like desegregation and equitable funding of infrastructure and trying to close the generational wealth gap.
Yeah. Those I think we agree on the benefit of those. But one thing I'll always push, and I am going to wrap it and get to a next caller because little too much airtime on this particular topic lately, and I'm excited to get to Frank Rizzo. But you are welcome to keep calling back in. I do value these conversations. I think that the thing that gets missed a lot is, if we do it by law, if we do it by authority, that's top down. That's the government saying you have to do it this way. You have to have this desegregation. And there are certain ways where we can zoom in and say, okay, you know what? People are less racist if their schools are diverse. That's a good societal benefit. Maybe we can do some rule changes about school districts that accomplishes that, so more people play with blocks in kindergarten with somebody who looks different than them, and that makes them less racist, and that's good. But I talk about the schools for a reason, because I think that those sort of long-standing institutional problems are things that go away in a bottom-up sense if we just educate people better. And that's a slow solution. A lot of the leftists disagree with me about wanting to fix things in these slow ways where we say make education better so that the next generation isn't as racist. That doesn't solve racism today.
You're right.
But I just think it's a fact of the matter that on this particular Thursday, we're not going to solve racism. I don't think we're going to solve racism in the midterms, but I think we can put ourselves on a path to really quash the effect racism has on quality of life for minorities in this country if we vote for the sort of people and policies that I'm promoting. Which, to kind of cap this conversation, I'll say that I have this depending on the exact topic, almost completely leftist worldview that I just think because I'm such a pragmatist, because I really care about what's actually possible in American politics, that puts me in the liberal category all the time. I think we just need to educate people more, and if that makes far left liberals out of them, that's great. If that makes leftists out of them, that's great. We just need to get more people on team. Let's feed the hungry, and then we'll come up with some policies that accomplish that. Yeah,
I'm with you there, and I think education is a great first step. I remember reading Paulo Freire's The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and that was a great book on education and how we can create the kind of conditions to allow the oppressed to see their own oppression, because I think MAGA forgets it. They don't even see how they're being used. Well,
I was gonna say they're upset about us being against all this establishment shit, and they don't even realize that we're championing for them too, because racism might not be the problem if you're a white Trump supporter. But the capitalists are fucking you over. The billionaires are fucking you over gloriously, and we're on the same team. Yeah. And I don't think they realize I want their kids to go to a nicer school. That's what I'm really about.
Yeah, the last caller couldn't even fathom that, because he's projecting his own selfish ideals on everyone else, and it's just sad to see. But yeah,
I appreciate your time. Yeah. Thanks for calling in, SUDEEP. Before I let Frank Rizzo up, I will just read Tim Davidson's $5 YouTube super chat. He says, caller, there are people who have to get their groceries through Amazon. What if Jeff Bezos said no Republican gets Amazon deliveries ever again? Well, yeah, and that kind of I wish I'd read it during the call. Sorry for getting to it a little bit late. But yeah, I mean, that gets to this concern about Jeff Bezos has so much control over the way that the world works. It's just unfair. We just shouldn't let individuals have that kind of control. We'll talk to Frank Rizzo. Go to the link tree in my bio. Support me. Yay, I quit my job. Woo. Frank Rizzo, please connect. How old are you?
We went over. Oh, I'm sorry, you don't remember. Yep, 48. Sorry.
I think I do remember you. I just always got to ask
Brooklyn,
anyway.
You're from Lower Manhattan. Yeah, you're from Lower Manhattan.
Yeah. I remember. What are we talking about today?
What age? No, to the age group. What age group are you in?
I'm 30.
30. So you don't remember back in the early 90s, late 80s when we had public restrooms in New York and they failed because the bums were started sleeping in them, and which one bad apple spoils the whole bunch.
I'm just the age that I remember them all being locked because they hadn't actually gotten rid of them yet. They were just closed, and it was frustrating.
Yes.
So yeah, there's a problem with public restrooms, is that it is expensive to keep them maintained and cleaned and not get them abused. I would argue that instead of closing the bathrooms, I would prefer that we address the homelessness problem. That's a better way to fix it.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, it is a problem. I recognize that I had a job a couple of years ago where it was a public-facing office that was like a community center where people would come in and use the bathrooms. We had a problem with homeless people coming in, and of course, we're not going to tell anybody they can't use the bathroom. But it was sometimes my job to clean the bathroom after somebody had come in and trashed it in one way or another. Sometimes doing substances in there and then smearing shit on the walls, crazy shit. So that's a big problem. It's a shame that those programs get abused by people who are use them in a way that makes it hard for them to be a net benefit for society. I just don't think that locking them up and saying no more is a good solution, because that unduly punishes the people that those sorts of programs, whether we're talking about public restrooms or something else, why take it away from the people who are getting such benefit of it because we're letting one person fuck it up? Like, if that one person fucking it up creates a little expense for the taxpayer, bummer, life isn't fair, but I just still think the program can be a net good, especially if we also tackle the homelessness problem while we're at it.
See, you want to call it homeless, I want to call it mental ill. I mean, I don't know if you're aware. Again, I'm a little bit older than you. Something
like 75% of homeless people have some kind of diagnosed mental illness. Yes. I'm aware of that. The two problems are really seriously related. Yeah, completely. I don't know if you remember, Geraldo Vera did a whole report. You know where Staten Island University is, by any chance? Is it in Staten Island? Yeah, but did you know where it is? No, I'm not. Okay. All right, so that used to be that. Yeah, so in late 80s, they closed that down because Geraldo Vera did an expose that they weren't being treated right, and yada yada. We used to have a lot of mental facilities in New York City. I don't know if you're aware of that. I mean, we still have one at King's. What's that? King's. I can't think of the hospital now, and I see it all the time. Doesn't matter. They still have a mental ward. But here's the thing: once the Democrats turned around and said, "Hey, we need to leave these people on the street and give them an option whether to be put into a facility or not," that's when everything started deteriorating. I mean, Rudolph Giuliani had this. There used to be a tent city right over the Manhattan Bridge. It was there 2 weeks before Giuliani comes in the office, and what he said is he didn't get rid of them by getting them out of there. He made the welfare centers job centers and put a lot of these people to work, where we're all willing to give. You're saying part of the problem is food? I don't know. There's plenty of food out there that's being given out for free. Like I told you, I'm in the Canarsie area, between Canarsie, Mill Basin, Georgetown. There's at least 6 food pantries that you can get food from. But you have to go to the food, just like you and I have to go food shopping. They could go get that food for free. When I was in Florida working, there was food pantries. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just getting a little lost in the sauce here. We can look at individual programs and their success over the years and judge particular politicians involved and all that stuff. But broadly, I think that we should use taxpayer money to address these problems. I think we have enough taxpayer money to basically solve homelessness. I'll be straightforward with you. I think we should make ultra low income housing. I think we should have like concrete room housing, like en masse, where there's you'd need a person who worked each floor, just like you have a DA in dorms in college. You'd need somebody keeping track of those people, and it would be massively expensive. It's like a highly democratic socialist type of thing I'm offering, but I genuinely think we should build some enormous buildings, staff them with qualified people, and I'm talking about slightly higher quality homeless shelters, because the homeless shelter system is just completely overwhelmed, and we could just fix it with more money, and that would save the taxpayer money, because homeless people are so expensive to the system for all the things that they do if we're not offering them those sorts of services. I wouldn't mind a pretty hefty expensive bill that addresses that type of issue.
We have that. Left rack buildings. Coney Island has low income housing.
But you can point to a building and say this building does that. I'm saying we need 100 times as many of those buildings.
You could do 1,000. These people are still going to abuse the system. They're abusing it in NYCHA right now. I know people that work for NYCHA, and they go in, and you and I can rent them, just argument's sake. And what they do is then they go out and they rent the rooms out. Like, say it's a 2-bedroom, they're making it to 3 rooms, and they rent them out. But like you're saying, should they have a dorm monitor? Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
I mean, I can imagine a such situation where, there's like a probationary period where maybe then you get to live in a place where you don't have somebody up your butt about what you're doing if you're trusted to not, trash the room you're in or trash the communal bathroom that these floors might have or something like that. I just think that the homeless shelter program is of benefit to society in a way that we should fuel with a shitload more money, because the consequences of having people being unhoused is great cost to society. And I just don't think we're doing enough about that. But that's specific to homelessness as an issue. I guess in having this conversation with you, like, what are we talking about? What are we arguing?
I'm just now we're going to go lead to my next thing. Your ultimate goal, if I'm wrong, please let me know, is you're self-sufficient right now. You're a W-2 employee, correct? You 1099, I'm sorry, because you get your money and you have to declare, correct?
Well, from about a dozen different places, because now I'm doing social media for a living. Yeah. So it's complicated.
So what amount would you cut yourself off at once the donations come in? What's your, like, do you say, all right, I just want to make 100,000 this year and then I'm going to
I think about that because so just for everybody sending me the money, like Valera, who sent me a $10, is that NZ? Is that New Zealand money? Sent me some New Zealand money, $10. Okay. They retracted their message, so I didn't see it. And thanks W in the chat for Jen, our mod, who is gifting out some memberships over on YouTube. Thanks for doing that. I have my cost of living covered by doing this. Generally, it's because it's donations. People do need to keep sending them all the time, so I have to keep urging people to do it. And because it's volatile, and I don't know if I'm going to get banned and completely have my income cut off. In addition to my cost of living, which I'm doing okay covering right now, I also need to build a slightly better like emergency fund, because when you're self-employed in this way, the amount that you need for an emergency fund is bigger. So I need to put some money away. And I'll be straightforward and say that before I started doing this, I was like paycheck to paycheck, flat broke, worried about eating, what I was going to eat sometimes. So I don't have much of a savings. So I need to work on that. And then after that, I've got some debts to pay that I'm going to pay. So I need to think about how I'm going to talk to the public about what the donations are for beyond that, because there's a couple things I'm excited to do about if this makes more money for me. I'm a musician, so I can call it a business expense, but like the only like expensive thing I want that I'm excited about is a nicer acoustic guitar, because my acoustic guitar is an $80 piece of shit I got on Facebook Marketplace, and I just need something better for gigging. But I'm not really interested in lifestyle inflating all that much. Like, obviously, I could make more than I do and have slightly nicer things. But yeah, above somewhere there about $100,000 a year, somewhere above all that, I should put it away and try to do something good with it. I want to be straightforward, I don't want to sit and do this show up to 1 million followers. If I ever get Dean Withers big, I'm going to be running a media organization. I'm going to be working out of an office building I'm renting. I'm not going to keep doing this as a bedroom enterprise, because I care too much about the mission statement of this show to pocket all the money and just keep doing it in that way. It's not what I want to do. I'm thinking very carefully about what I can do with that larger budget. And the show is like already taking on an employee, because I have somebody who's doing some back end work for me who's going to get paid for that, because I'm fucking overwhelmed by all the things I need to do to run the show. So it's a complicated conversation. It's but yeah, I'm just going to be honest and open about it as I go and try not to make promises I can't keep.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all.
No, so you know who John Catsimatidis is?
No.
Oh, so he's the largest owner of supermarkets in New York City. Then he's building all those housing complexes in Coney Island. He's also building them in Florida, but he's Apple Media. His father came here, worked in they weren't called bodegas back then, I forget, a small little grocery store. And then, as time went on, he bought that small little bodega and then, worked his way up.
Yeah.
So if you're going to cap a billionaire or whatever you want to call it, a rich person, what gives them the incentive to create jobs? With the wealth also comes job creation.
Well, the important thing about progressive tax rates is that I always need to point out to people, it's not as though anybody in my neighborhood of the political spectrum is suggesting that once you have so much wealth, like, you can't have any more, because that does create a situation where in a system, even if it's highly regulated capitalism, that does prevent people from wanting to work harder. But the next bit of work, the next amount of money that you make, you still always will be then getting more. It's just that the percentage of it that gets taxed is greater. So you can work harder to get a bigger boat. You can work harder to live in a bigger house. I just think it should be a steeper hill to climb than it currently is, by a lot.
So let's just take Bernie Sanders. He used to go after millionaires. Now he's going after billionaires. Do you know why? He's now a millionaire, and he realized.
I think that there was a long time where you could say that the millionaires were the problem. It's just that because of inflation, being a millionaire is not that meaningful anymore. Most millionaires are people who have a net worth just above $1 million, and basically all it means is that they have a halfway healthy retirement and a house. Because if you have a halfway healthy retirement and a house, in most places in this country, that makes you a millionaire, and that's become true because of inflation in the last 30 years. So using the label of millionaires, if Bernie Sanders were to do that, would make those people, who I would argue have succeeded at living their American dream. You got a house and a retirement, you fucking did it, good job. He's not talking about those people. He might still be talking about people who are worth $100 million. Or $1 billion. So we talk about billionaires, but I hope you understand that when we talk about the millionaires that might get balled in with those billionaires, somebody who's worth $900 million is basically a billionaire, and they're still in a completely different class than somebody who owns a house and has a retirement, but maybe doesn't have a ridiculous amount of money sitting in the bank or a ridiculous amount of equity in a company. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm just saying, you and I mean, my father worked hard, Local 3, has a great
Specifically,
retirement.
I think it makes sense that Bernie Sanders has shifted his language from millionaires to billionaires, because just referring to, I would say tens of millionaires or 100 millionaires are also a problem. The tens of millionaires, not as much, but the 100 millionaires are getting up there in that class. So I think in the 90s you could say millionaires, because you probably would have to be kind of a problem economically for society to be a multimillionaire. But these days it's just not so true anymore because of inflation.
See, here's the other thing. So let's talk about the property. A lot of people are millionaires because of property. I could say I'm a millionaire because of the homes I own, but that doesn't mean I'm a millionaire. I don't have millions of dollars in the bank. Where Bernie, I can't fly private as much. I would love to fly private, and I'm sure you would also. We both go and we look for the cheapest fare.
Well, and that's why I'm not talking about millionaires like you when I talk about
I'm saying
eating the rich.
Him and AOC fly private, and I'm trying to figure out, well, okay, so you're telling me tax those people that the upper echelons, but if you're stepping foot on a private jet, you're a part of that upper echelons. Then when Congress,
well, what are these arbitrary cutoffs? Like, we're not going to start taxing people because
what's the arbitrary cut? That's what I'm asking. When I ask you, what is your goal? See, my goal in life was to make $150,000 a year, say. Okay? Made my $150,000. I'm done for the year. I don't have to work there. I wish that, I wish that's the way it worked for me, but it doesn't. You know what I mean? But everyone wants to tax the rich, tax this, tax that. There has to be a higher tax bracket. I think what's the highest tax bracket right now? About 37%?
Yeah, something like. And then the effective tax rate's much lower because they get around it in a bunch of shitty ways I was talking about earlier.
And what did Mr. Trump say? Change the laws. He's not going to change them because he is one. When Hillary and Bernie all said that, why don't you do it? Because they all take that tax advantage. If they're not taking the tax advantage, I mean, you and I
don't know what we're talking about. We're kind of all over the place here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So we're talking about tax.
You're asking how I want the tax brackets to work, and if we look at them, we don't even need to invent something like mystical to talk about how good a progressive tax system like the one I'm offering can be, because we literally already did it in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. The boomer era was we had all this industry that was focused on World War II, and after the war, we went right back to making America great for white people. We did that.
Did you really say that out loud to me? Wow.
Yeah. If we're going to talk about making America great again, it was only ever great for white people, and it was in the 40s, 50s, and 60s when we were taxing the shit out of the wealthy to make America great. So I have to put the asterisk on it that the 50s weren't a great time if you were black, but if we want to take some of that greatness and give it to everybody, the thing we can learn from mid-20th century post-World War II America is that the highest tax bracket shouldn't be 37%, it should be 90%, which it was, I believe, in 1950.
Why would you make so? What gives them the incentive to keep working? Once they hit that, they have the arbitrary numbers.
Because that arbitrary number is high enough that 10% of your next million is still $100,000, and $100,000 is still a lot of money.
So you're willing. So you want somebody to just take pencils, okay? So you want the person pencils. We'll use pencils. So you want the guy who buys the machinery, employs the people, pays the insurances and all that stuff to work for $100,000 when one person could get hurt on the job.
Forgive me. I think there might be a thing about tax brackets that you don't understand. You understand that a person, like if the first tax, in my ideal system, you don't get taxed at all up to like $50,000 or something like that. I think that we should just not tax people who make that little money. You do understand that the millionaire, the billionaire, under a progressive tax bracket would also not get taxed for their first $50,000, right?
Which is pennies to them, 50,000 to you and me.
Right. So, but your concern is about somebody not being motivated to make more money than they already do. So somebody who makes $50,000 gets to keep it all. They want to make another $50,000 because they'll be able to keep 40,000 of it, because maybe we'll only tax 20% of that next 50,000. The next 50,000 after that, maybe we'll tax that instead of 20%. We'll tax that 30% or whatever it is. Like we could we could do the math problem of figuring out what these brackets would have to be. But the point is, you still make more money. You still have a greater take home if you make more money. But the curve gets steeper, which it currently does because of progressive tax rates. It should just be more steep. And if that motivates fewer people to take over the world in the way that Jeff Bezos had, that will be a good thing. I think what you're missing is that the sort of tax brackets that I'm presenting wouldn't really affect somebody who's trying to start a company and do some enterprise to make themselves wealthy in the conventional sense that most people think about. Do you want to have a big house with a pool in the backyard? Do you want to have a nice truck? Do you want to have a vacation house? Do you want to maybe legroom is important to you? Do you want to fly first class? I'm okay with the tax system not making it all that hard to accumulate that type of wealth. I actually am talking about a tax system that will make it easier to accumulate that type of wealth, because the sorts of social programs that we would get from taxing the ultra wealthy are of such benefit to society that any one person is far more likely to end up being the sort of person that I just described. And if people are content with a pool and a vacation house and flying first class, that's fine.
Didn't Bezos start off in his back garage mailing books out, if I remember correctly? Right, Bezos.
Yeah.
I forget.
Bezos. Yeah, Amazon originally was a book retailer online.
Yeah,
that was like how it started.
In his backyard, he started it, and now he's.
What does that have to do with what I just said?
But that's what I'm saying. So you tell him, okay, now you are going to go into food, because I think they own Whole Foods. But you think he wants to invest that money, only making $100? Just say it makes $1 billion. You think he only wants to make, or $1 million, whatever it is. The math, I'm not thinking straight right now with that.
Well,
so
no,
you
but
think
if he's going to make $1 billion by owning Whole Foods and expanding it, and $100 million is fucking an insane amount of money.
I'm not arguing that part, but you know what? That gives him the right. I mean, he invested the time, the effort, the manpower. He just didn't come up with it. He worked his way towards it. I mean, right? Whole Foods, right? He owns Whole Foods now. Whole Foods would be out of business.
I have a question for you. I brought it up earlier. We already did this in the 50s. We already had this sort of progressive tax rate. And it was a time where the commercial success of everyday people was insane. The likelihood of any one person living their dream, working a job, going to school, paying for their family. You used to be able to just get a pretty normal job and pay for a family. And then that would give you the free time and the free capital to maybe work on your own private enterprise. The system I'm describing has been trial run in this country already. And then it got overthrown by the people at the top because they took control of our politics. It was in the 70s, 80s, and 90s that we started getting rid of these progressive tax rates because the people who had won and were sitting at the top wanted more. They were so greedy that they used the wealth that they had to influence politics in such a way that those super heavy-duty progressive tax rates went away. So they got to continue beating the system where it's no longer about how nice a house you have because they don't make houses nicer than that. It's no longer about the type of steak you get to eat for dinner because there isn't a table tastier steak than the one you're already paying $150 for, or whatever it is. They're just playing for the fucking high score. They're in it for the love of the game. They're in it for power. You know, Trump was going to die wealthy whether or not he became a politician. He wants to rule the world. He wants to win the pissing contest with the other billionaires. Once you're that wealthy, they stop caring about the numbers. You know, no, billionaires aren't sitting around comparing net worths. They're bragging about which celebrities come to their parties. They're bragging about what buildings their names are on. They're bragging about the political influence they have. They're bragging about the wars they're starting. It stops being about money when you have enough money to buy literally everything you could ever possibly want.
Paying $105,000 to sit at courtside with the Knicks, right? I mean, same celebrities.
Sure. If you're that wealthy, then it doesn't fucking matter. That's not that much money.
But those are the same people that are saying we need to tax people more, but they're sitting courtside. You know what I mean?
Who are you talking about?
Oh, what's that? I don't know. I'm not into celebrities. The woman that's getting married to Travis Kelce at Madison Square Garden, and I mean, her and her bridesmaid was
talking about Taylor Swift.
There you go, Taylor Swift. I'm sorry.
Yeah, fuck Taylor Swift. She's also a
okay.
billionaire.
So all right, good. All right, I'm glad. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that part. Yeah, I mean, she has more money than most countries, they say.
Yeah, fuck her.
So I mean, like even Spike Lee. Yeah.
She's a rare case because it's unusual for a musician to be able to achieve that sort of wealth, but she should be doing more with it. The fact that she's allowed herself to become a billionaire shows that she's more interested in running a music empire than doing good for the world. Fuck her.
How about let's go Jon Stewart? How about that one? Because he actually got his courtside seats for free, where Spike Lee paid for his courtside seats.
Yeah, I like him.
I like him, but meanwhile, look, he's sitting courtside, $100,000 seat.
But it was free.
It was free for him.
So.
But what happened until this year? Thank God for Cohen. I mean, maybe you don't like him. I mean, people like him, some don't, especially that he's friends with Trump. But he had to stop people from selling those tickets. The same celebrities that had to sit there, 9 times out of 10 say, "Oh, I couldn't make it," and they sell that seat to someone. What I'm saying, so Stewart's another one. He's an ultra rich, but yet, okay, well, what's he doing to help society except getting on his show? At least you're doing it, not making millions like he does. So I give you credit for this. But I know we're jumping over and I got to get going. But isn't your ultimate goal to get your own broadcasting system?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
so I mean,
my dream is to fix media in this country. Our entire media system is run on bullshit, and there should be somebody like me sitting on the television, not most of the people that are doing it. I went on this whole rant recently about, what's her name? Is it Kristen? Oh, I don't want to mix it up. No, I'm not going to look it up. The woman who got the woman who got Donald Trump to storm out of the interview and got him to say on camera last year that he doesn't know if he needs to follow the Constitution. I think we need a no bullshit environment in media. And if I the one way I'm Christian Welker, thank you, Storm Rider in the chat. She is running. She is being the sort of journalist we need right now, and I think that. The individuals sitting in front of the camera, like whether they're doing it out of cowardice because they're going to get fired or not, I think that they're just dropping the ball. They're failing to execute their civic duty to not take the bullshit that's coming from mostly the right now, not take the bullshit coming from the president. There are so many politicians where nobody should be asking them any question other than why are you hiding the Epstein files? I don't care what your tax policy is. I don't care what bill you're proposing. I don't care about any of that shit. Why are you hiding the Epstein files? You are a danger to this country if you were restricting justice for victims of sex crimes. Like fact that this has been able to slide at all. So yeah, I talk about what the path forward is. When I look, I'll be straightforward with my audience. I'm about to say something maybe a little bit controversial. I have the same revenue streams as some of the bigger guys, and I'm good at math. So I have some idea of what certain people are making, and it's too much for how little they're doing. I'm going to start a media empire if I end up with that kind of money.
That's what John Catsimatidis did with he has WABC and a few other stations, and he has it's more right. I'm not going to tell you no, but he does have left on there also, and that's the problem. There's no station that's besides that one that I know of. NPR started out that way, but once the Clintons started donating a lot of money to them, then they started just going to the left.
Yeah, I mean, now, and we have to, it might be what I do as the minor internet celebrity I'm becoming. I think the people who listen to me every day just trust me as a person, right? I don't, I think the longer anybody listens to me, the more they realize I'm not going to get rich and fuck them over. So if you believe in what I'm doing, if you believe that if Oscar's in charge of more, he'll do good for media, that's why you should send me money. That's why you should send money to my Venmo and my Cash App to keep this going for me. So I got some fucking plans about how to handle discourse in this country. I've got some things to say, and I'm getting kind of excited about the fact that people find my approach to discourse actually refreshing. I think I'm not falling into a lot of the pitfalls that people on the left tend to right now, whether they're in media or in politics or even just, your everyday liberal walking down the street. I think that the Republicans have won. They've gotten on top with what they present as a no-nonsense approach to politics, but it's no nonsense in name and presentation only. Yeah, they curse. Yeah, they're quick. Yeah, they're witty. Yeah, they get a jab and they'll trash talk a little. But it is bullshit that they're selling. I don't sell bullshit, and I think that the people who aren't selling bullshit don't have the teeth to sell it in this market. So if that's what I offer that's refreshing to people, I want to amplify that to the degree that I'm going to be able to in my life. That's what I'm excited about, given the success I've had at this over the last few months. I want to make a fucking difference for what it means for the media to have control over people's minds, because it does. It's social media companies and the people who run the television networks that control what people believe and understand. And I've said it a bunch today, like something like a third of the voting adults in this country believe a bunch of insane conspiratorial nonsense that just isn't remotely true. Like, for example, these rumors about how dangerous illegal immigrants are. They're just made up. It's just lies. You can find a horrible crime that an illegal immigrant committed and put a spotlight on it and put it on the 6 o'clock news and say, look how dangerous they are. But it just isn't going to be, it's not. I just don't get it, like, how can people fall for bullshit for this many years in a row? But I'm understanding it more and more with each day. And if I get to leverage what I'm doing to benefit this system, that's the plan. That's what I'm going to do with my money beyond my needs.
With the Epstein files, I'm sorry, I can say that. I don't want to get you in trouble with that.
Yeah, we can talk about and to that point, even on this platform, I really push back on people censoring themselves. I think it's terrible that I've had to learn how to speak in this Orwellian newspeak that I have to speak in order to make it here on TikTok. But no, we can talk about the Epstein files. We can talk about the fact that the president is probably a rapist, or is a rapist, but probably also did some awful things to kids.
Hold on, we're just talking about the e-files. Let's not go off on that tangent.
Yeah.
But the e-files. So I don't know if you're aware. There's video. See, I bring this up on other panels. There's video and audio on that item. Now I can't remember the gentleman's name. That's a CIA agent or former CIA agent that brought Obama's torture things out, and he was put in jail and yada yada yada. Mm-hmm. And he's the one that says, "Oh, there definitely is," and he thinks he's a Mossad agent. But you do know that any senator or representative can go and look at those files unredacted, but yet no one does and no one talks about it.
I mean, they do. So there are representatives who are. I mean, like there's the Lou. I forget which state he's from. He is talking about releasing names. I mean, Massey's talking about releasing names himself. It's. I mean, the Epstein files is a grievous miscarriage of justice, which I think is obvious to anybody who's looked at the facts of the matter. But yeah, what direction do you want to take on that? So my point is, though, it doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to blame Trump for not releasing them, but there has to be. See, maybe you're not a conspiracy theory as far as I'm concerned. There's something more to those files, that both sides don't want to let out. Now, do they want to bring Trump down with it? Absolutely. But even Clinton said that he doesn't believe Trump did anything wrong. But I think Clinton might be involved himself. But we would know if they would.
That either. But there's a reason these files won't be let up. Now, there's according to the CIA guy, he said that island was actually controlled by Israel. The Israeli government, and that's why they won't let it out. And they have something on everyone, and that I can believe, because it doesn't matter Republican, Democrat, Independent, Socialist, Communist. They're on that island. And that's why they won't let it out, because, I don't think you'll live to see. I mean, the last man who wanted to get rid of the CIA, You could say it on here. He said he wanted to break the CIA up into 100,000 pieces or 1,000 pieces. Ended up with getting assassinated.
I just want to respond to a specific thing, which is that the lawmakers don't have access to all of the Epstein files. They have access to less redacted versions of the Epstein files. And because it's Trump's FBI that prepared them, we just can't actually trust very well that they're not adulterated in some way that would be a further violation of the law. We just don't know. There's no way to tell because it all happens behind closed doors. But what we do know is that they've definitely let things slip, which is why our congressmen and women can go in there and find things to report on the House floor. Some of the best evidence for the fact that Trump is implicated of crimes against children in the Epstein files is stuff that those representatives have shown us on the House floor. And I'd also like to point out that there's 6 million Epstein files, even with hundreds of lawmakers looking. It's not an easy task to find what you're looking for in them. You know, most of the Epstein files are boring, inconsequential shit. Is it interesting, the hotel receipt from when someone stayed in some hotel room somewhere sometime? Maybe that's relevant. Maybe something bad happened to a kid in that hotel. Maybe they were just on a business trip and that's where they stayed and it has nothing to do with anything. So a lot of the Epstein files are just boring and uninteresting shit, as is almost the case with a large-scale investigation of that sort. So I'm just not impressed by these concerns about the whole system being corrupt when the fact that there is this specific law that was passed to address the situation because of the concern that the public had, and the law isn't being followed. So the focus just needs to stay on the people who aren't following the law. I'll take a moment to thank No Naval Nate for $2 on YouTube Super Chat. He says, ask the caller if he knows how much 1 billion is. I think that was the previous caller. Sorry, I'm very behind on my YouTube Super Chats today. I'm a little distracted.
Well, I know if it takes a month to count to 1 million, but it'll take 5 years to count to 1 billion. Yeah, I know the difference. That's the thing, is that a million's 1,000 times less than a billion. So if you take $1 million away from a billionaire and we round up just a little bit, there's still a billionaire. And then Jazz Baron Crab added for $5 on YouTube Super Chat. He works for 100K. No, he sits on his ass and lets people under him make that post-tax 100K. Company owners rarely, if any, do the actual work. So yeah, that was earlier in the conversation about progressive tax rates. And I agree, yeah. In addition to the fact that we should be taxing these people more just based on their wealth, they're also not actually working that hard. They're not actually doing the productivity. I have to get back to work, but as always, it's a pleasure talking to you, not fighting, and not raising your voice and have logical conversations. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you too. I do raise my voice, but not with people like you, because you're willing to have a conversation.
Okay, so let me be more specific. I've never heard you raise your voice.
I deserve when I raise my voice, the caller deserves it. I promise.
Okay, all right. Have a great day.
You too. And I'll take Valera for another $10. Is that New Zealand? Is NZ? Is that New Zealand dollars? How interesting. Russian officials have publicly promised to reduce the U.S. to radioactive ashes for decades. Unlike Iran, Russia has nukes and is already fighting wars in Europe. Should Trump not bomb Moscow then? I make the same argument about North Korea. Everybody says, "Oh my God, Iran! What will happen if they get nukes?" And it's like, nothing probably. Like, come on. We're going to talk to, I should give myself the commercial quick. We got 20 minutes left in the show, so maybe we'll get another debate in. Been kind of a slow burn today's show. And I don't know what happened with the viewership there. It shot up to like 1,000 for a second. I think that might have been a glitch, because I don't actually think that many people were here. Anyway, you should go to the link tree in my bio and, follow me on the other platforms and send me some money or stuff, because I did quit my job to debate with Republicans, and I'm having a hard time even finding Trump supporters today to talk to. We're going to talk to Ari Samuel Rosen. Maybe he's a Trump supporter. Maybe we'll get one more debate in before we wrap for the day. We shall see. Do. Is he going to connect? I don't think so. I'm going to disconnect him and we're going to move on to Fighting Spud, IE. Maybe we'll get maybe you guys will hear me yell today. I don't think I have yelled today.
Hey, I'm a friendly. I don't know if you want me as your last one.
No, we can take a friendly. I got 19 minutes left in the show, and I do allow friendlies in the last half hour. So what do you want to talk about?
I'm not going to lie, I'm a little irritated you didn't kind of press Frank on if he supports the administration and what policy he does or does not support. Like, I really like your show and all that, but he just gave so much word salad talking about, well, what about Bezos? He started in his garage, and it's, anecdotal, even personal experiences that isn't the policy.
Yeah, I think part of it.
You see what I'm saying?
I can take the note as host that I need to do better. There's something I always need to work on. No,
Yeah,
no,
I'm not trying to
no, it's fine. I don't mind criticism at all, and I think that your criticism is a good one, because one of the things that I have to do as host is when I do remember the caller, I have to remember to give that context, because not everybody listening knows them, because I think that the avenue I took with him might make sense if you've heard some of the conversations I've had with that guy before. Because I could give him the standard, why do you support Trump grilling, but I know that fundamentally the reason that guy supports Trump is because his worldview is kind of small. So I find it more valuable to talk to him about these specific things, where it's like, why are you judging by your experience in New York? Why are you judging by what your own life looks like? Why are you so I can take the criticism on that. I think I did as host fail to take that conversation in an interesting direction. So I don't mind constructive criticism on the show.
I enjoy a lot of your debates and conversation. I really appreciate everything you're doing. You are a teacher, a substitute teacher? You were?
I was until about 12:30 today. It was my last day.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Like that.
Yeah.
With
Turn
that
my keys
said,
in and everything.
Yeah, attaboy. So with that being said, with the Department of Education, how do you think we should be going about it compared to like the current administration making cuts? So, federal funds, state funds, obviously federal cuts then impact the states. Do you think it should be more of a state by state issue? Or do you think we should have federal funding? And as far as like regulating or curriculum, where do you stand on all that, I guess?
The Department of Education gets about 10% as much money as the military. And I think that those two things are about equally important to the prosperity of this country.
It's crazy that we purchase pews over books for kids.
Yeah. I think that the fact that we can weigh how much the government cares about something in dollars, and the fact that we care 10 times more about our military than our education system is fucking absurd. I think I think we need to recognize the existential threat that stupidity is to this country. Sorry to say it so frankly, but having an underfunded education system makes people stupid. It makes people who are less likely to vote for somebody whose policies are good for the country, and that's the problem we're running into. So I consider what's happening in education to be an emergency. I spent some time at the beginning of the show today talking about how sad I was to hang up my job as a teacher, because I actually got to sit down with kids and help their brains work better.
Right.
Didn't talk about politics at work, to be clear with everybody. Right. But I was very much in the trenches of dealing with kids who... half my students couldn't write their name legibly. We've got an emergency. And I worked at a private school. I worked at a reasonably privileged school.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. These are kids who lost some years in school to COVID. These are kids that are addicted to their smartphones. These are kids who have grown up using like ChatGPT for general knowledge instead of Wikipedia.
And end of capitalism, consumerism market. Yeah.
Yeah, they're all those things that we're mad at the capitalists for. We now have a generation of the
byproducts.
They've grown up in a world so deeply in shitified by capitalism that their brains don't work very well. So you asked about state level or federal level, and I just think that that sort of nuance doesn't even matter when the budget is an order of magnitude smaller than I think it should be. If we want America to be great, we should make Americans great. And it's education that makes people great. Some people think I'm great at running this show, and it is flatly because of my education. I grew up with a very privileged education, and I have only chance to thank for that, because I happen to be born in a place that had an incredible public school system, and I happen to find myself involved in some stuff that gave me some academic paths and some work experience in education, and it's because of all of that I'm so reasonable. I'm so reasonable that like 100,000 people are into what I'm doing. And I just want to share the love on that, because it's education is the solution to all of our problems. It's just not a very fast one.
Absolutely. And some of we have wealth gaps. We also have education gaps and opportunity gaps. And when you cut the Department of Education, it makes it even harder for those that didn't have opportunity or privilege to elevate or do better for themselves with even less opportunity. when you take education away.
Yeah. I don't know how it's not more obvious to people. I mean, unfortunately, it's not very obvious to people that are themselves not particularly well educated. But knowledge is power, man. Like that cheesy phrase, it might be one of the slogans. That's one of the hills I'll die on. You know, there's only benefit to come from being a more worldly, better read, more articulate, more literate person. Being better at math, being better at all the random science topics that we all argue about when politics come up. Most of the discussion about biology that Americans have is limited to the scope of trans rights. And that means that everybody's getting really shitty at biology because they're listening to a bunch of podcast talking points about gender to learn how chromosomes work instead of the other way around. We should just teach people how chromosomes work so they come to reasonable conclusions about trans people without having to listen to some talking head like me. I'm facing the issue directly. I'm talking to uneducated adults, but the big thing we need to do is just get better at educating children.
That's the only way that we have a better future. And it drives me mad when people are like, defund this, or they complain about property taxes, which property taxes is typically the sole thing that funds the school, or not the sole, but a substantial part is property taxes, right? And there's also prorated progressive taxes based on how much property you have or where you live, which also kind of evens the playing field a bit. Now it gets way more messy than that with school districts, especially in certain other areas. But, you brought up a little bit of healthcare there. As far as Medicare for all, where do you stand if you want to pivot?
Yeah, I think that broadly, you can talk about Medicare. It's just that I think that as a progressive, if we're going to talk literally about what being a progressive is that we should focus on progress. And 100 or so years ago, it was progress to suggest that children should be in school instead of working in the factory, whereas now it's obvious that children not only should go to school, they fucking have to. You know, there are some states that kind of drop the ball on checking on homeschool parents. I'm looking at you states in the South. But in general, we consider it obvious to society that it's good to have free education for kids. It's good to have free middle school for kids. It's good to have free high school for kids. That's where we're at right now. We're talking about having free options for something beyond that. We used to pay for the fire department, and that was bad because the fire department would let your house burn if you didn't pay them. So we did away with that. Now we run the fire department as a free public option, and they just come fix your shit no matter who you are or what's going on. Even if you did it yourself. And, then we have the police who work for free to keep you safe to deal with it if you committed a crime that resulted in the fire department showing up. So just when it comes to medicine, I just think of it the same way I think of the fire department. Why do we pay the fireman to help you for free, but not the doctor? That doesn't make any fucking sense to me at all.
Yeah, it should be absolutely regulated and I'll go as far as saying that it should be operated by the government entirely. Other countries have done this, and the cost that we pay for Medicare and Medicaid would likely go down if we did it all through subsidized or government-ran healthcare. It's a lot with that, but
and as a society, we need to decide what the next important step is, because I could list everything that I would love to have be free. Groceries should be free. Housing should be free. There's a bunch of stuff that people need that we could just make free, educate the shit out of those people, and then we'd all get to live really wonderful lives. But that is too expensive and politically unpractical. So we can talk about the things that we can do right now. We can maybe forgive some of these student loans. We can maybe create a public option for healthcare so that insurance companies stop making a bunch of money off of our illnesses for no reason. So that insurance companies stop making paperwork decisions that result in unnecessary death to protect their profits. Like, those are all really bad outcomes from capitalism. And the democratic socialist, roughly, I always put an asterisk on that because no political identity bottles me up very well. We're just looking at the areas where, like, hey, capitalism fucks up in this way. Let's have the government do that instead. That's like my political perspective in a very oversimplified nutshell, and it just applies to everything. Education, healthcare, fire department, it's all the same thing for me. It's the things society needs. Let's pool some wealth and do a really good job of doing those things so society is on average better for everybody. I don't care how expensive it is.
Right, regulated through the government is what you're saying, like via taxation, though, not like independent. Okay, just making sure.
No. I think we need to collect more money in taxes.
So you talk about, or you spoke about progressive tax policy. Would you mind elaborating further on that?
I think at the very top, you should get taxed like 90% of your take home, which is a lot, but I'm only talking about people who are already making like millions of dollars a year potentially.
Right.
It should be, a pretty smooth curve up to that high level of taxation. And we also need to close the sort of loopholes that allow wealthy people to preserve their wealth in a way that prevents them from paying taxes. Because there's this nasty loophole that ultra wealthy people use to effectively not pay any taxes on their income, which is that instead of selling their shares and using the wealth to then live their lives, which we would be able to tax as income, what they do is they get their net worth in like company shares for the companies that they own or work for or whatever. They, instead of taking a big take-home paycheck, you just take shares as CEO, something like that, and then you can borrow money from the bank against the value of those shares, and the bank will just give you that money, and you don't get taxed on the money from the bank, and then you can just do that for your entire life until your estate is responsible for it, because now you're dead, you never paid those taxes, but your estate has to sort out the fact that you owed the bank a lot of money and you had a bunch of equity that it was collateral for. But then the inheritors, the people who get to benefit from your estate, there's this nasty little glitch in our system where the people after you don't have to pay the tax burden. And even if they did, it doesn't really matter because the person who did the thing is dead. So we need to have some sort of financial regulations that prevent billionaires from protecting themselves from capital gains taxes by kicking the can with bank loans against their enormous equity, literally until they die, and at which point the capital gains taxes that they're supposed to pay just poof disappear. And not to mention, over the course of the decades it took them to die, inflation has made it such that their wealth is increasing in a way that's also not correspondent to what they're getting taxed for. Like, we just need to change the fucking system for taxing wealthy people, because I'm not gonna fucking cry if you can't afford a second yacht. Great, you have a yacht. We took the money that you would have spent on the other one, taxed it, and built a fucking school. Like, yeah,
fed children, free lunches.
Yeah, exactly. That's my general perspective, is that we have enough prosperity in society. We have enough productivity in order to make everybody's life decent, to make sure everybody's basic needs are met. And there are people who don't want that to happen for a bunch of really fucked up reasons. And unfortunately, the ultra wealthy who really benefit massively from this have convinced a bunch of people at the bottom that policies like the one I'm promoting are going to make it harder for you to become conventionally wealthy, when the math says that that's not actually the case. The sort of tax structure that I'm talking about actually makes it easier to become a low-level millionaire. Because I actually want to tax people who make less than $1 million on average less, because I don't think you should hardly get taxed at all until your needs are met. I think that we could have a tax structure where where your tax rate is $0. We could make it so that the tax rate is negative for people who are really poor, and just call that universal basic income. Oh, the government could say, oh, you're in the negative tax bracket. You only made $25,000. Here's $5,000 more dollars, and then that's your tax rate. That would work. That's mathematically consistent. That doesn't cause the economy to collapse. And we did something like that in not the negative tax rate, but we did this aggressive a tax rate in the 50s and 60s, and it was great. We accomplished a lot. That's when America was great for white people.
Real quick. So, you talked about the loopholes with borrowing. So now it's a loan against stocks. You can also do the same thing with real estate, which, surprise, surprise, real estate has been booming right now, because if you take a loan or leverage against a property, it's now a loan and you don't have to pay taxes on it. It's the kind of the same difference with that. So I think that there needs to be real estate loopholes, or at least regulation on those. Now, as far as like trusts and wills and stuff like that with inheritance, do you think that there should be a cap on how much an individual can inherit from whoever be a beneficiary for, monetarily or assets? Or
there are some other progressive policies that don't really get talked about at all that I would support, because I personally would support things like a wealth tax, where even if you don't make any money, but if you have a lot of equity, I'm okay with like a single digit percentage wealth tax annually. Or to that point, something like what you just brought up, I wouldn't mind taxing estates. Like, oh, are you inheriting more than $100,000? There's I could see a tax curve on that, where if you inherit, $500 million worth of estate, like part of the requirements is that you liquidate some of it and sell, 30, some big percentage of it if it's that kind of money. Because it is unfair. It's not fair that you can pass wealth to your progeny and that just is they just win the lottery effectively by being born to you. I think in terms of protecting personal freedoms, I respect some libertarian concerns about preserving your own wealth. I do think that if one of the benefits of becoming wealthy is that you get to die not worrying about your kids.
Yeah, 100%. I agree.
I'm okay with that.
There is a limit, but there is a limit.
It's just a limit, yeah. Your kids don't need $1 billion is the thing. They'll be fine.
10 million versus 100 million versus $1 billion is significantly different. I'm not trying to hold you up. You might have somebody else next, but one last thing to close on. I'm a union guy myself. What is your thoughts about unionizing labor force in general?
I think unions are good. I'm pro labor rights generally, and unions seem to be a good, essentially third-party mechanism to allow the negotiations that are necessary, because that's really what it is. You have the workers and you have the companies, and the negotiations between them are kind of muddled by the fact that there's a power structure involved that allows, historically we've seen it go wrong a lot. People get exploited for their labor, no good. And so the labor unions give you that collective bargaining. That's one mechanism of solution that doesn't necessarily involve writing your congressman and then changing the law in such a way that that the labor can't be abused in the way it is. The reason I prefer the labor unions over just changing the law to prevent the bad labor practices or to codify whatever it is you're negotiating for is that labor unions are able to negotiate year over year in much more of an ear to the ground sort of way, whereas if we have to legislate everything that the laborers want, that the working people want, it's just slower and it's just logistically not a sensible way to approach it. So I'm super pro union generally.
Much agreed. Unions are the laborers coming together as a collective to fight for wages, to fight for benefits, and usually have a contract and representation for discipline or negotiations for further contracts. But you can go ahead and drop me a host. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate you fighting, Spud. Interesting show today. Not much opposition. Even with RIZZO, he was kind of nicer than he usually is, I think. So that's the Oskar Quentin show for today. I would run it long, but I've got a gig tonight, so that's not happening. I am looking forward to someday in the next week. I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to do a super long stream. I'm just going to have a day where I stay on. If the calls are good, if the views are good, I'm just going to pick a day and like try to go like 4 or 5 hours and just see what happens. But for now, I'll just remind everybody that if you want to support what I'm doing, you can go to the link tree in my bio and follow me on the other platforms. That supports me for free. You should go follow my backup TikTok accounts, Oskar Quentin 2 and Oskar Quentin Music, for when this one gets banned, because that's gonna happen eventually, and I'd like to be able to still do the show if I get a 3-day ban or something. You should go follow those. Doesn't cost a dime, and if you have a dime that you want to spare to support me in my new gig, because I did quit my job, had my last day as a high school teacher today, I now run the show full time, which I have been doing for a while. I've been a substitute and like not taking shifts for ages. But I formally don't work there anymore. So, yay. If you want to support me in that endeavor, you can send me some money to keep me going, keep the Oskar Quentin show alive. And I feel like I did a terrible job watching the chats today, so sorry if I missed a message I should have seen. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. I will see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock Central Time. 10 to 12 Central Time is when the show is going to be happening every day for the foreseeable future, because I no longer have a day job. Goodbye, TikTok. And goodbye, YouTube. Uh-oh, where'd my button go? Now goodbye, YouTube.